pasadita. Let's go.
Hi, everyone. We're live. I see that all of you have made a few comments in here. First of all, I'm sorry for the confusion with the dates. I hope you can make it. If not, I will let you know that this is recorded. So if you miss some part, or if you couldn't keep up, or you need to leave early or something, you'll be able to review it later. Okay, so I'll start with the introductions. For those of you who are new in here, my name is Raquel. I am from Lisbon, but I work for Ironhack globally. And if you don't know Ironhack, we are a global tech school. We have bootcamps on web development, which is related to the webinar today, but also on UX UI design, on data analytics, a little bit all over the world. We have several campuses, either in Europe or in America. And we also have a remote bootcamp, which I'm actually doing right now in part-time. So if you want to know a bit more about this, let us know. We'd love to answer all your questions that you have about Ironhack, the bootcamps, and so on. If you're thinking about starting one, we are the people to answer your questions if you want. So this will be the overall structure of this webinar. We're going through the webinar right now. Nico and Juan will be doing it, especially Nico. Juan will be answering your questions. And in the end, if we have time, we'll open a bit of a Q&A if you want to ask a bit more generic or more complex questions, okay? They will be explaining a bit how it's going to be. You can try to code along. If you go in here to the Ask a Question section that you see below the videos, you will see that I put something called link to repo and link if you want to code along. So these will be the links that you need for this webinar if you want to if you want to go ahead and try to code along. Okay, they will explain this a little bit more to you. Yeah, a little bit of the rules just before we start. So you have the comments in here. It's great that you do. Let's keep it just for comments. I'd love to know where you're from. You can leave it in the comments. And if you're hearing well, if you need something like the sound is not great or something is not going well, you can leave it in the comments. But if you want to actually ask a question during the webinar, I ask you to do in the Ask a Question section so it doesn't get lost. You can even upvote it if you see that's a question that you want to have answered and it's already there. All right? Let me know if this is okay to you, like leave some thumbs up or like an okay. Oh, from Miami, hi. In the comments. Mexico City, cool. Also, you have a green button in here below the videos. I'm pretty sure you can see it. We just gathered some useful links that if you want some extra resources like the upcoming webinars or some blog posts that you can read, like with useful stuff for you, either from web development and for other things, in the bootcamp material, like if you want to know a bit more about our courses and so on. From Lisbon, hi. So if you want to know a bit more, use this link, okay? And if you have any questions, even if we can only answer in the end, leave it on the Ask a Question. I cannot stress this enough, just because sometimes in the comments it gets lost and it's harder to answer. So here it's a bit more organized, okay? All right, someone here will start the bootcamp next September. Amazing. I hope you enjoy this webinar then. So I think I'll leave it now to Nico and Juan for them to present themselves to get this going.
Okay. How's it going, everybody? My name is Nico Zikas. I'm the lead teacher in Miami, and I have the pleasure of Raquel and Juan over here, who is my best work wife ever, my TA and my confidant, Juan Grajales. So today we're going to be doing a e-commerce website. It will be a little, there's a few different complications in here. So try, if you want to code along, go ahead and try to, but also just feel free to pay attention, listen. We'll share all the code and the video in the end, right? And Juan, do you want to say hello real quick?
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Juan, Nico's work wife. That's what you can call me from now on. I finished the bootcamp last year in December, so I'm excited to be here to help you guys. So if you have any questions, make sure you put it in the Ask a Question section. That way it doesn't get lost in the chat.
Yeah, that's it. Just reminder again, I don't know if all of you were here in the beginning, this webinar is recorded. So if you feel like you are not keeping up, just listen to it, okay? We'll try to keep up just by listening because you can review it later, all right? So don't worry about this. So if all introductions are done, and you don't have any, it's amazing to see. Just let me tell you that our people here are starting the bootcamp, so they can have a bit of an overview of what you're going to learn. It's gonna be a bit fast, and it's gonna be as profound as it is in the bootcamp. But it's great that you are here. Well, if all introductions are done, I think I'll leave you to the webinar.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to just share screen here. Go ahead and we can get started. All right. And we will start with the slides. So can't see any more faces, so I'm assuming that everyone can see this. If not, someone please Slack me. But basically, today we're going to be building an e-commerce website. So what does that mean? Basically, this means that we're going to have a shopping cart, and we're going to have a list of inventory. And we're going to want to take the items from an inventory and put it into a shopping cart. We're going to want to display all the items, and then we're going to be able to want to just calculate the total or something like that. For this, we're going to be using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay, so these are all the front-end tools that you will need. Okay. And basically, HTML is kind of like the markup. It's kind of the content, the words, the text. And the style sheet, the CSS, is the aesthetics. Okay, so let's just start there. Let's just look there before we get involved with any JavaScript. And then after, we'll use JavaScript in order to actually make everything work. So in order for this to work, I'm going to go ahead and use Visual Studio. Okay. I know maybe I'm moving around a bit right now, but I won't be in a minute. I'll try to combine everything. So with Visual Studio here, I have an index.html, a JavaScript file, and a CSS file. Okay, so don't worry, I'll stop shortly so that you guys can all take a nice slow look. And basically, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to use this Visual Studio extension called Go Live, that when I click it, it should open a tab in my Chrome, and that is rendering the index.html in my Visual Studio. You're like, wait, hold on a second. What does this mean? Some of you guys might never have coded before. So like I said, I'm going to go ahead, slow it down, and put it side by side. So here we have, on the right-hand side, my code, my .html, okay? You don't actually have to have anything in here. You could write, this is HTML, save it, and then you'll see it here on the left-hand side. Let me blow it up for you, make it nice and easy to read. Okay? And so basically, this file, the HTML file, is the text that shows on screen. Okay? If I save it, this will refresh. Hopefully. Oh yeah, there, and you will see it there. We're going to use a little bit of a boilerplate, another little snippet called HTML5 that puts a couple of things in there for us, and then we'll get into detail about what that is exactly. Okay, so here now you'll notice I have this thing called a head, this thing called a body, and it's all wrapped inside of HTML. Is this necessary? No, but it is helpful because it lets other developers understand little details about your web app, okay? So it's a good practice, okay? And now if I write this here, spell it correctly, save it, we should, just restart this real quick. We should see this live update, okay? So this is HTML, okay? And HTML is composed mostly of tags. I'll just get into it over here. So basically, what is a tag? Well, a tag has got these two little things, right? It's got this less than and this greater than sign, okay? And these are known as chevrons, right? Or in Florida, we also call them alligator mouths. Okay, this is an open alligator mouth, and we can write out tag inside here, whatever we want. Say bold, all right? And here now, this will be bold text, okay? And you'll see if I save that, this is bold, right? Likewise, if I put I tags, this will be italic. Italicized, I'm not sure how to say that. Italic text, right? And that also works, okay? We have more than just those. We have a lot more. We have tags that decide what size something should be. So for instance, we have like this H4 tag, and this is a certain size right there. And if I was to decrease the number to say H2, it would be bigger, right? And if I was to increase the number to say H6, it would be smaller. So H1 is actually the largest, okay? And so these are just different properties that are built into italic, bold, H1 tags and the sort, okay? You have other very common ones, like this is for paragraphs. Okay, all right? And that basically will make a break, just like every paragraph, and you have a lot more. You can always reference these online, like at W3 Schools or in lots of different other places. There's some that you should use in certain situations, and there's some that you shouldn't, okay? But at the same time, it's always good to know that you can always override all these natural properties with CSS. So what is CSS? CSS is this file. It ends in .css, okay? And this file allows you to design everything. So while we were here before in the index.html, you got to everything I wrote, you got to see right here, right? But with CSS now you get to not only, you don't get to see it, it's not about writing the text, it's about styling the text, cascading style sheets. The one thing you have to do with CSS and JavaScript is link them to the HTML. Once you link them to the HTML page, then they will work. Because again, this is the page we're looking at. This is index.html. This is the final draft, if you will. So let's go ahead and link our CSS. All right, so you do link, right? And you say rel equals style sheet. href is where it's located, okay? And I understand, like that this, might be a little confusing at first, this kind of syntax, but you can always Google it. If Visual Studio didn't help me out, you probably would have saw me Googling it just a second ago, right? So basically, now that we have this link, we need to tell what the file name is and where the file is. Since the file is right next to me, I don't have to actually put any of these dots or slashes that you might see when you're navigating directories. I can just write style.css because that's the name of it right there. If I save that, that's all it took. This is now linked up. Okay? Oh, sorry. Do this. Now my CSS is linked to my HTML. Okay? And so what does that mean? That means that any of these tags, like the ones that we were previously playing with, I can now control over here too. So for instance, if this is a certain size, is H1 right here, I wanted a target for my CSS, I'd write H1, and I'd maybe change the color. So let's just go with pink, okay? Okay, and there it goes, all right? And if I wanted to change this P tag, all right, I would write P, all right? And I would change that to the color green, okay? And as you see, that works as well, all right? And I can do that for all sorts of things. And it's not just color that I can change, it's size, it's a myriad of different attributes that really nobody knows all of them, but you have to learn how to just peruse them, how to go ahead and shop for the ones that you want, if you will. Let's go ahead and play with a few more. So for instance, the body is this whole thing. If you look at index.html, everything is inside of the body. Not only can text go inside of a tag, but other tags can go inside of tags. So this body encompasses everything. So what does that mean? That means that if all of a sudden I was to put, say, a margin on this body or a width, all of these guys would be affected too. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll say padding, and we'll say 50 pixels. And now you'll see that everything moved in, okay? If I was to say the background color, was, let's go ahead and say a light sea green. Okay. All right. Then you would see that this is the entire app, the whole body. Now, if I was to just take the background color off the body and I was just put it on the H1, it would just be here. It would just be on this guy. Keeping it on the entire body, right, allows me to sort of apply it to all these different tags, right? If this seems overwhelming, and sometimes it often does, there's a really good, let me see if I can open it. Yes, there's a really good extension, right, called pesticide. A pesticide, well, if you click it, it'll put a border on everything around it. You can just Google Chrome pesticide or Firefox pesticide. We'll throw it in the notes, but this will allow you to see all the divs and understand how you're styling them. So again, in the body, we had this background, this padding of 50 pixels. So you saw 50 pixels from the left, 50 pixels from the top, right? And this is where it is. That's what the padding means. Okay, now if I was to go ahead and I have to say margin, right? You notice that it looks kind of the same if we had pesticide toggled off, but now the body's inside here, okay? And I won't get too much detail about that. Let's go ahead and just move forward with it. The general idea that you want to walk away with here is that you need index.html for the content of the page, and then style.css allows you to do all sorts of fun things like different colors and whatnot. Okay, so that said, let's move on really quick and just introduce JavaScript. So JavaScript is the programming language, okay? And this is the de facto programming language of today. It is basically very, very popular because it exists in the browser, okay? Actually, before we go into JavaScript, let me show you one more thing. So here you can open up your dev tools, okay? And that's, if you click here, you went to more tools, and you went to developer tools, you can toggle this thing back and forth. Again, more tools, developer tools, right? Or there's also a shortcut where you can go ahead and hit Option Command I or J, okay? And that should do it as well, okay? And so basically what happens here, second before we get into JavaScript, is that you can see all sorts of really useful things that you can use when designing or when coding or whatnot, right? This is the console. This is basically revolves around JavaScript. We'll come back to that in a second. But I want to go to the Elements tab. This Elements tab is kind of the same thing you see on the right-hand side, okay? We have, I'm going to close pesticide for a second. We have all these different tags. There's I tag, there's B tag, there's H1 tag, there's P tag, right? We have all these different tags also written right here. And so this allows you to go ahead and kind of like test things out, if you will, on your app. And it also allows, you can actually go ahead, you can edit the HTML, and you can go ahead and say add exclamation marks, you know, and this type of thing. But when you refresh, it'll be gone. But what else you can do, but you can also see what elements, what styles are applied to it. So if we remember, our P tag and our H1 tag, they had colors. And now we see this color pink right down here. So if I was to click this, for instance, maybe pink wasn't exactly what I was going for, I could go ahead and play with these attributes till I find something that I really liked, copy this. Now if I refresh, it's all gone. But if I came here and changed the pink from that to this color, okay. There we go. Save it. Now it's that color, right? And so using these dev tools, we're only using one tab, and there's many tabs. But we're using the Elements tab right here, and we're gonna get into the Console tab too in a minute. But basically, using these tools, these developer tools, is incredibly useful. You're gonna find that, you know, there's no real way to code without it, especially when it comes to front-end development and design. So really, the earlier you get used to this, the better. And here, of course, you can also add all sorts of other things. Like, for instance, we can say font size. and we can say, 200 pixels, which is just ridiculous, right? Or something much smaller, right? You can also go ahead here and use this as a great opportunity to peruse all the CSS styles. You literally can type in any letter and just start scrolling, and look at how many different things there are for you to play with, okay? And does that mean you should know all these? Absolutely not. There's no one who's going to know all of these different styles. You just want to be able to kind of
Nico, real quick, sorry to interrupt you. I think your audio cut off a little bit, like a little muffled.
Right now, can you not hear me?
Okay, there, you came back good. All right, cool.
Are you sure? Okay, cool. All right. So for instance, here you can go ahead and, I don't know, maybe there's something that maybe you want to go ahead and draw a line through something, right? So a line through, you have to learn how to just Google it, and there it is, line through, and there it is. It's called text decoration line through. Something like that. I think I messed that up a little bit. There you go, and now there's a line through it, okay? So basically, there's a CSS style that does everything you could ever imagine, right? You could obviously underline or overline or all sorts of other things. Apparently, there's all sorts of options here that no one's ever probably thought of, but just goes to show that there's a CSS attribute for everything. And if you like it, you take it, put it here, and make sure you use the correct syntax, and then now it's applied. Okay, I moved it to p tag down below. Okay, so that's CSS, HTML, and the dev tools. Okay, staying with HTML and CSS and the dev tools before we get on to the e-commerce side. I know there's maybe I'm dragging on a bit, but this is also very important, is that there's other ways of targeting HTML besides just the name of the tag here. All right, two very, very important ones are called classes and IDs. Okay, so for instance, if I was to go here and I was to just say, have two elements that were the same, I'll keep them all here. Just add another one up here. I have to do it. There's another very common selector. It's called a div. All right, probably all have heard of divs. This is a div. Okay, stands for divider, or something along those lines. All right, and so if I have just a plain old div here, and I want to target it, I could target it just like everything else with this, right? I could go ahead and say, hey, I want a background color of red. I want padding to be 20 pixels, right? And it's working. Okay, that's a little too harsh for me, so I'm gonna try to. Let's go back to 10. Okay, all right. And so basically, I can target it like that. Let's say, for instance, there was more than one, right? What would happen then? Well, now this is a div 2. This is a div 3. Okay, they're all going to be targeted. Okay, and there's a little space in between all of them, right? So they're all now. They're all now these separate divs. Okay, and so that's cool. But say, for instance, another way of targeting them is called a class name or an ID. Say I wanted to just control div 2. Now, there's going to be a lot of ways to do this. But one of the common ways to do is have some sort of identification. All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're just going to give them the ID of 2. If I save this, I go into my CSS, I hit ID of 2, okay? I can now overwrite his previous background color to a different one, called Firebrick. Save it, and as you see, now this middle one, right, with the ID of 2, okay, has this background color now added to it. All right, so here in the index.html, the ID of 2 let me target the specific one. Okay, and so that's great and all, right? And IDs are typically for one thing. Just like you have one ID, right? Well, usually, right? Then basically, so should you use IDs like so, like they only have one of them. Classes, on the other hand, you can use interchangeably. Right? So if I were to go ahead now to say class equals, and we're going to call this just an example. Okay? And if I was to do this, I can copy and paste this everywhere. You can have a class and an ID if you'd like. And now class example is on all three of these, so that when I go and I do class example, and that's with the dot, so IDs have hashtags, okay, and classes have dots, right? And then this is just selecting a tag. Okay. So now with example here, I can go ahead and target all of them. So I can go ahead and I can skip maybe a border of 1 pixel dashed, I don't know, purple. Okay, all right, save it, and now they all have it, although it's kind of hard to see. Okay, and if I was to go ahead and say, for instance, also maybe add a margin of 5 pixels, you'll see that they're spaced out now. Okay, and we'll increase this so it's more obvious. That's too ugly. Over here. Okay, and now you can see that with the classes, with the class example, I can target multiples. But with the ID, I really only want to target one. Even though I like this fire brick color, I'll change it for examples. Okay, there we go. Okay, so that said, IDs for 1, classes for 2, and tags are there. Big point here, you write all the content again in the HTML, and you can style it in the CSS. And you do it by selecting things by their tag, or by their ID, or by their classes. So if you walk away with one thing, walk away with the idea that that's how you go ahead and you design or style things. Okay, and there's so many cool things you can do just here. You could go ahead and use this asterisk, for instance, and that will go ahead and style everything. Okay, so you can go ahead and say, I'm not sure, let's go ahead and make everything have a border of 1 pixel, solid red, and you save it, and now everything has it. This is probably how JS Fiddle works. Okay, what else is cool about this, and what Juan will attest to, is that I always love to do this, transition, all, 1 second, and now whenever something changes, it's going to transition. You might have seen that effect right there just a second now, right? Save it, and now, while things change, they actually transition. You can transition any property you want. I've just chosen all of them. So for instance, here now, if I was to go and I was to using some JavaScript possibly, make this larger or something, right? So let's say from margin 5 pixels, we'll go ahead and we'll say 50. You'll see it grow. It'll take 1 second to get there, and I can switch it from this color to another, and you will see it slowly change. And you can achieve this with CSS transitions and animations. Okay, but I'm getting off topic. We're supposed to build an e-commerce site, so let's get back to that. Last tool we're going to need in order to do this is JavaScript. And JavaScript is a programming language. It's a programming language that exists on both the front end and the back end, on the client side and the server side, but has always been the only programming language that exists on the front end, on the client side. It means it runs in this browser. And that's what this console is about. So you have elements, which is HTML and CSS primarily, and you have console, and this is JavaScript. And in here, you can think of having a calculator of some sorts. Right? You can do all sorts of crazy different computations, and this is going to become very useful because you're also able to run JavaScript code. So now I can alert a hello, and you see it pops up right there. Okay, so JavaScript is the programming language that's running in your browser. Okay, and that's how we're going to use it today. So what does any of that mean? Okay, let's get into it. So basically, I'm going to make this very big. We're going to put this HTML and CSS behind us for a minute. Okay, and we're going to think just about JavaScript. So JavaScript is composed of all different kinds of functions, variables, objects, arrays, and different types of data types. This is quite a lot. So if all of a sudden your head's about to explode, you're probably not the only one. This is recorded, and you can go ahead and you can Google a lot of this and learn as you go. So basically, what is a variable? A variable is something that you store data in. Okay. So for our example, right, we're gonna go ahead. I'll just do this real quick. We're gonna go ahead and we'll say const. We'll say work wife, and we'll say let work wife equals Juan. Okay. So now, what does that mean? That means that I can get Juan's name by just typing in work wife right here. Okay. Oh no, can't do it. Oh, why? Because just like CSS, JavaScript has to be linked. Now you can throw the link anywhere, but it's common practice to throw it down here. And that's because you want your HTML typically to be there before your JavaScript. So we'll go ahead and we'll just do this. Script source equals, notice how this is different. This one says source, whereas this one said href. Again, these are just kind of semantics. Feel free to Google it and it'll come right up. So script source is equal to script.js because that's the name of the file. I save that. And now if I type in my work wife, I see that in fact it is Juan. Okay? And so basically I can run all sorts of methods in here. I could just alert work wife. And now when I hit save, it'll refresh, and you'll see Juan comes in as an alert. If I wanted a console.log without me typing in here, I go ahead and I just switch this to console.log. Save it, and there it is. Okay, so now you can see that even if I was to change these names, right, I don't have to change this code. I can just change this piece and say I'm referencing work wife all over the place, and all of a sudden I get a different work wife, God forbid, then basically I would have just change it one place and it would reflect all other places. Okay, and that's kind of some of the power of a variable, okay, and the fact that you can just change it one place and it'll reflect all sorts of other places. So that's a variable, and the variable that we're going to be using is a variable that contains items that the store sells. Okay, so there's let, and basically that means that the variable is allowed to change, and then there's const, which means the variable is not allowed to change. But we're just going to focus on let. We're going to go here, and we're going to say let items equal these items. Okay, and so now I just copied and pasted these items. These are basically just the names of certain products, the price of those products, and an image of those products. So now, just like before, if I typed in items here, I would have what's known as an array. Okay, so an array is kind of like a list, and in each list item there's an object. Okay, so these are keywords here, and I'll write them all down. We'll go ahead and we'll start here. We'll say we learned about variables, and now we're learning about arrays and objects. Okay, so here now, an array is a list. It doesn't always have to have stuff like that. An array could be something as simple as, you know, just an array of letters, for instance, like this. That's just a list. And so if I want the first letter, it starts with a 0. That's the A, then that's the B, that's the C, that's the D. If I wanted to go ahead and add one here, all right, I could do that, like that, and now my array has 5. Okay, it's just a list. Okay, there's all sorts of methods that go along with this, including length, for instance, like how long it is, including push, for instance, will allow you to add one just like we did. So if I push F, now I have F in there too. There's also pop, which lets you do the opposite, takes it away, right? There's splice, there's slice, there's shift, there's includes, there's reverse, there's all sorts of things, right? Basically, again, something for anything that you would need. Okay, so you see the current trend here. There's always a method or a CSS attribute or something that can do what you want it to do. You just have to learn how to Google it correctly, how to word it, and put yourself in the correct environment like we have here in order to test it out. So that said, that's an array, and not only can it hold strings, that's another word for just words, but it can also hold objects, which are these things that come in curly braces. And that means that I can go ahead and go further inside. So for instance, in this situation, I have items. I want my first item. It's going to be this object. That's the same thing. Okay, that's the first item in here. So if I wanted the price of that, I would do dot price, and there's the price. Okay, and if I wanted to change the price of that into equals, you know, much more expensive, right? Now, if I look at my items, 0, right? You see that the price has updated, dot price. This is known as dot notation, right? So now I've actually changed all my items so that this one got so much more expensive. And I did that again by just setting it equal like this. Now, knowing exactly how to do that or what this is called is not super important, but the fact that you can do it is what's important. We'll say dot notation, and we'll say bracket notation, or two other things, good Googles on that note. Okay? Once you save and refresh, you're back to 0. Cool. So what's cool about JavaScript? Well, JavaScript can do so many things. It's mind-blowing, right? Even CSS is mind-blowing. So what we're going to really do is we're going to want to make a list, just like we have here, right? But we're going to want to make it with this stuff, like we have here, okay? So in order to do that, right, we're going to use what's known as a for loop or a for each loop, okay? And so for loops, I think anyone who's tried programming before, it doesn't even matter what language, is comfortable with the idea of a for loop. What does a for loop do? It just goes ahead and counts. They say let I equal 0 if I is less than, we'll say 100, I plus plus. This is maybe the most common for loop there is. I go ahead and hit save, and you're going to see my console count up to 100. Okay, there's another way to do this. Okay, there's lots of ways to do this, rather. Okay, one of the ways to do this is a for each. So if we're going to go through our items, okay, we can go through our items by doing this. Items, for instance, bracket I dot name, and then we'll see. Hold on, we'll see this 4 break. If we go I is less than 4. There we have it. We have all of our items' names. Another way to do this is to use a for each loop, which is items.forEach item. Okay, and in this scenario, we'll get the exact same thing, but notice the syntax different. Okay, item dot name. My apologies. There it is. So now we just did the same thing 2 different ways. One with a for loop and one with a for each loop. One of the nice things about a for each loop is that you don't have to know what this number 4 is, right? You can just go ahead and write it. It knows how long this array is already. So let's go ahead and continue with just this for each loop. Awesome. So let's see, make sure everyone's still here. Okay. All right, cool. So now that we have that going on, let's go ahead and show these things, this Ironhack tee, hoodie, sticker, and mug, on the screen. I'm going to start by, as sad as this may be, just going ahead and deleting all this. Or, you know what, I will do what's known as a comment. Okay, if you have Visual Studio, you command / and it'll just comment it all out. That means it's not really being used anymore, but you can save it for later in case you want to reference it. Save it, and we're back to just a nice green background. So here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to want to, again, add each one of these guys into here. So how do we do it? Well, we could just go ahead and give it the class example like we had before and see what that looks like. So why don't we try that? But basically, we're going to need to manipulate the DOM, okay? So this is known as DOM manipulation, okay? And basically what that means, manipulation, what that means is that you can go ahead and change things here. Let me bring back my HTML for a second, just to make an illustration. We can change things that exist here with JavaScript by itself. So that means that you can go ahead and target things and switch them. So for instance, one of the most common things we're going to use is this thing called a query selector. Okay? And query selector will let you target things just like CSS did. So back here, we had this ID of 2 for this guy right here. So we targeted this ID of 2 in CSS with this hashtag 2. So I can go ahead and do the same thing with JavaScript, the hashtag 2, and now I can go ahead and I can change it. I can say, hey, look, this inner text or inner HTML is going to be equal to, whoa, dominant. Cool, right? I do that, hit enter, and then look, I literally changed the text. Okay? I can change anything I want. I can go ahead and I can say .style, .css, for instance. I think it's .style, .background color, is equal to red, right there, right? And so I'm able to now manipulate what previously existed in the DOM with JavaScript. If I was to inspect this, I would see that, look, I literally put inside there new HTML that didn't used to exist just by using this document query selector, just by using JavaScript. So the opportunities here are endless. And just like here, I can go ahead and I can just cut it and paste it in here. And now when this file loads, that's going to be blue. And there it is. Okay? Didn't start off blue, came blue because of this line right here. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and close this. So now that I can change the text there, I can change the lines there, I can do whatever I want to this DOM, then I might as well say, okay, well then how am I going to add these items then? Okay, well, the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select something in here. Let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and we'll delete all this, or comment it out again. Comment it all out. We're going to add what's known as an unordered list. Doesn't matter. You could have used a lot of things for this. And this is just, we're going to go find this and we're going to add things to it. Okay? This is known as an error. You get these a lot. The more you code, the more you get these, ironically. So basically, here it tells you what line it's on, script line 35, and that's because I haven't saved this yet. So once I save it, that'll be gone. Okay. That said, let's go ahead now and add stuff to our UL. So how do we do that? So basically, in order to do that, we go ahead and we have each name here. So what we can do is we can select the query, so we can query select it. So we can go ahead and say, we can say let list equals document or unordered list. Well, I would say list. Say document.query selector. Okay, and we'll select the UL, which is the list, and we'll say list inner HTML plus equals, and now we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a list item. Okay, and again, there's lots of different ways you could have done this. Just got to pick one. And then here, we're going to do what's known as string interpolation, and we're going to go ahead and put the item name. Save that, and boom. Now our stuff is in the DOM. Okay? Just like we logged it here, we added it to the DOM there. Okay, and now we don't have to just add this, but we can add all sorts of things, right? So we can say name, for instance. That's the name of it. We can go ahead and we'll say space does not matter in JavaScript, so that's why this will be fine. We'll go ahead and we'll say span. No, I'll say div. Div. Okay. And now we can just copy and paste this stuff. I'm not going to do name, I'm going to do price. Add a little $sign here. And we'll say item.price. And then I'm going to say image. And for an image, you don't want to just do this. You'll see that we got the price and the image. The div's a little big, probably because of my CSS. Let's go ahead and find this div. Yeah, let's get rid of that. Okay. All right. You don't typically want to see the image as this crazy ugly text. You want to put the image inside of something. So usually it's an image tag, image, and you say source equals, and then this goes in there, and hopefully see some pictures. Save it, and we do, and they're huge. Okay, so here's a t-shirt, a hoodie, sticker, and a mug. So that's cool. We did all that with JavaScript, but the problem is now is that we don't want pictures to be so big, and that sounds to me like not a problem for JavaScript. It sounds like a problem for CSS. So let's go back here, okay, and let's focus on fixing that issue. So you need to select this image. So how could you do that? So if you looked at the DOM, you would see that this is an IMG. It didn't used to exist, but it exists there now inside of a list item, inside of a UL. So we're just going to go ahead and say IMG, and we're going to give it just a width of, say, 100 pixels. Save it, and that's much more manageable. Now we have our shirt, our hoodie, our sticker, and our mug, and it's all nice and neat there. Okay, and we have basically, I'm going to take off some of this padding, it's a little too much. Okay, and basically now we have, we're almost ready to start shopping. Okay, so what do we do next? Oof, I'm running low on time already. Okay, so again, there's nothing here. I'm adding all of these things into there from using JavaScript. One other thing I'm going to need is a button. Okay, and this button on click, right, is going to go ahead and is going to button, add a button, and this button's got to do something. So right here, this button's got to be like buy item. Okay, save it. Now I got all these items. Boom, 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 and that's great. Now buying something should add it to a cart. Okay, so we get on to the next part. So what happens here? The button. I'm clicking this button, it does nothing. How can I make it do something, anything? Right? One way to do that is to add an on-click event. Okay, so you can add an on-click event to it, and then you can target it. So basically, we can go ahead and we can say button.onClick, right? And then it can set it to equal to a method, or you could also go ahead and target all of them so that when they click, something happens. I'll show you a quick example, but we're not going to actually do it that way. Just want to show you that there's many ways to do this. Document query selector all will get every one of them. Button, right? And those are all four. It's an array of buttons, right? I can loop through them if I wanted to, each button, okay? And then I could go ahead and I could attach an event listener to them. I think that's a little more complicated of a way of doing it, which is why we're not going to do it that way. But don't worry, we for sure will have some sort of action on buy item, okay? So, so let's go ahead and get started with that. So basically we have an items, and now we need a list of carts. So just like we have this array of items here, we're gonna want an array for shopping cart, for items that we take. Right now, when you first get to a store, typically the shopping cart is empty. So our cart will be empty as well, okay? And what happens is that we wanna fill this cart with these items as we go. So how do we do that? Well, okay, so we're gonna need to go ahead and I'm going to say add an input, okay? And this input, this is maybe the most complicated part of what we're doing, but input, right, we're gonna say type equals number, because you can buy more than one thing typically, right? So we need to kind of address that. Type equals number, all right, we're gonna go ahead and say placeholder equals quantity. Okay, we'll go ahead and we're gonna start with this on change, right? And then we're gonna go ahead. I know this is the most complicated part, so I'll go over it again slowly. But right now, let me just get it all together so that you can see the big picture. Do that, okay. And go ahead and pass it the variable, okay? and this variable is going to be what number it is. So when you loop through things, typically this is 0, this is 1, this is 2, and you can get that 0, 1, and 2 by this I right here, okay? And a for each will let you do that, and we want to know which one it is, okay? So we know which one we're buying. So we go like that. If I don't have any errors, this may work, and you might be like, well, what's this? This is known as a function, okay? If I save it, okay, I have all these quantities now, but when I click it, I'm gonna get an error. Input change is not defined, okay? And this is known as a function. So you write the word function ahead of it. There's syntax where you don't have to do that, but we're gonna use this one right now, and this takes something known as a parameter, okay? So if I go ahead and I console log in function, and I say with parameter, and I go ahead and I say I, now if I save it, and I go ahead and I click on these, you see I'm in function with the parameter 1. Why 1? Because this one was 0. This one will be 0. This one will be 2. This one will be 3. Okay? I'm calling these functions on change. Okay? Even more so, I don't only have to get the index of them, but I can also go ahead and say get the value of them. Right? And that is going to be like this. I hope. Save it, and we go boop, boop, boop. Nope, it's not I.value, input change. Value. I'm going to have to go ahead and get it. I could. Input, on change. I don't think I could do it that way. Yeah. I'll have to go and get it. Okay, so basically though, what's really important here is that I have this I. Okay, with this I can effectively do a lot of other things. I can also pass in whatever else I have, which is going to be other arguments such as, we're going to say, item.name, comma, and go ahead and we'll say item.price. Okay, and these will be different arguments. So this one's the I, this one should be the name, and this one should be the price. Those will become very useful to us in a second as well. Save it, and here we go. I think I have a syntax error here. That one. Curly brace. Yeah, there he goes. So Ironhack sticker with the price. Here's the mug. Ironhack mug with the price of 8. Okay, and the name and where it's coming from. Okay, and I understand that this syntax is a little weird, but at the same time, just think when you move on to other libraries, other front-end libraries such as React or whatnot, you might understand why this is a more normal way of doing things as of lately, and so you would feel more comfortable. So basically, we are going, and in each one of these items, they're calling a function with different parameters. Okay, so the first one is going to be the Ironhack T. If you hit clear and I hit the Ironhack T, I will see I am in function with parameter 0, the Ironhack T, and so let's go ahead and write this out so it makes more sense. So now I'm going to say, I want to buy the, that should be a number. I want to buy the item named, okay, it's a name. Okay, and then I will say that costs, okay, and then we'll say price. Okay, and even though we're console logging here, maybe this will make more sense. We'll go ahead and say, I want to buy the 0 item named Ironhack T that costs $10. I want to buy the first item, again, 0 indexed, named Ironhack hoodie that costs $15. So we have the information that we're going to need in order to continue this. Okay, and one thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to want to get this exact list item, okay? This exact list item, and we're going to want to go ahead and get this exact button and get this exact value. So in order to do that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to select, okay, we're going to go ahead and we're going to say let list item, right? And we have the I that we need in order to get it. So we'll say let list item equal document dot query selector, okay, all list items. Now that's going to be an array. If I did this, I'm going to get an array back. I'm going to get all 4 of these. So which one do I want? I might want the first one, or I want the second one, right? Which one exactly do I want? Well, luckily I have this number. I have this number stored as I. So I can go ahead and just say I, and that's going to be the exact one I want. And just to prove it to you, I'll go ahead and I'll say, I'm not sure if it's going to work. We'll say list item.remove, and we'll save it. And now when I click on one of these, it's gone. Boom, that's gone. Boom, 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 boom. Right? Well, okay, everyone works except the last one. But worst store ever, right? Doesn't make much sense. So really, what we want to do is not remove the list item, okay? But we're going to want to go ahead and add get the input and add an event listener to that button, okay? So to do that, you don't always have to have document here. You can go ahead and you can have something else. So we're going to go ahead and say list item. We know that's the specific one that we want to attack, attribute, and we can go ahead and we can say dot query selector, okay? And we'll go ahead and we'll say input. Okay? And now, if I console.log, oops, input, and we'll say let input equal that. If I console.log.input, now whenever I change one of these, I'm going to get this input text right here. And if I say input.value for this, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to see that I want 1. Wait, no, I want 2. No, I want 3 of these stickers. I have that number right now. I got that number down here. Just like up here, I want 1 of these hoodies. No, I want 2 of these hoodies. And now I got 2 right here. And that's by doing this input, okay? And I can also go ahead and now attribute exactly that button. I can say list item dot query selector button, okay? And I can now attach an event listener to that specific button. So I can say button dot on click, and finally we get to do something, right? And this is usually another function, okay? And so for instance, if I was to go ahead and console log, I click the button. When I go ahead and I go boop, 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 I say buy items, it says I click the button. Okay, and that's going to work for all of them. Okay, I'm attaching a listener to each one of the inputs on change. Okay, but what I really, really want to do finally is I want to push into this cart. I want to push into this cart a new item. Okay, and then I want to loop through it. Okay, so go ahead and we say cart.push. Okay, and then here we're going to go ahead and we're going to say the quantity is equal to the input dot value, name is equal to the name. Okay, I already got the name from here. Price is equal to the price. I also got the price here. Okay, and now after I did all this, okay, oh, this is only when I want this to happen only when I click the button. After I did all this, you'll notice, one second, you'll notice that my cart keeps filling up. Okay, console.log cart. Save it, and now let's go ahead. We'll get 1, 2, 3 hoodies by item, and in my cart now I have 3 Ironhack hoodies, all at the price of 15. Here, if I go 1, 2, and hit buy item, I have 2 items. I have 3 hoodies and 2 stickers. Okay, Beautiful. So the last thing I have to do really is just show the cart. Okay, and that's effectively all you have to do. Okay, so basically, how would I show the cart? It would be the same thing, just about as this. Okay, only this time, instead of having this list, all right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to give this a list. We're going to say we're going to give an ID of, say, items. Okay, we're going to make another one with ID of cart. Okay, and now in the CS and the script, we're going to go ahead and instead of selecting it like this, we're going to select items. And we're going to make another one that's going to look just like it, right? It's going to be, instead we're going to say, we'll say let cart items equal this, ID of cart, and we'll effectively copy a lot of this. Okay, we're going to go ahead, we're going to wrap this in a little function, right? They go ahead and just says show cart maybe. Okay. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to take all this stuff, put it in here, and just instead of items, we're going to go ahead and we're going to say carts items, I think it is. No, carts. Yeah, cart dot for each. That's it, because it's still called the cart. We're going to say that, and I think the only difference here is that we don't want this, we don't want this, we don't want this. We want another div quantity, and that one's going to be item dot quantity. Okay, and we're going to give that a try, and we have to call show cart. So I know this is a lot right here after we click. Save it. Okay. Go ahead and buy 2 coffee mugs, and we almost got it, but something happened. The image is not there because I never pushed it in. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to want to do that as well. Say image. Image. We're going to pass in another parameter of image. And then over here, we did everything else. We will also do item.image. Save it. From here now, if I go ahead and I went and I bought 10 teas. There we go. I have 4 quantities. Okay. And we're going to want to make these look different, right? The idea is that it's working as of right now. Okay. And so basically, that's how you do a basic e-commerce site. Let's go ahead and make this look a little better. Okay. So we got 2 things in our HTML. We have items and we have carts. Okay. So we're probably going to want them to be side by side and maybe have different background colors or something like that. So in order to do that, we're going to go ahead and we are going to take our cart. That will take everything. And we'll display it flex. Save it. Okay. And now, if I buy item, it's still down there. We want to go ahead and we say flex direction is row. Okay. Okay. It's still not going there. And I think maybe what we'll do is give the cart a different background in a color. So we'll give the cart the background color of, we'll just say, call it salmon or something. Okay. So now our cart's there. That worked. I'm going to shrink these a little bit even more. I'm going to say the image is only 50 pixels. Okay. We're going to go ahead and we're going to say cart and items. I think. We'll say we're going to say the width 50 pw, which is 50% of the viewport. Okay. Now the question is why? Let's go to the right. So we go ahead and we try to figure that out. The body doesn't have much else into it. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add a section. I target that instead. Save it. Okay. All right. Doesn't want to be nice, will not add. So how will we go ahead and troubleshoot this? We go ahead and we realize that I am actually, in fact, adding things to my items, not to my cart. So that's a little bit of a JavaScript fumble there. Okay, and what I want to do is not add things to my item, but add things to my cart. And what I didn't do is switch this word to be this word. Now, I hope, go ahead, we add 2, and there are these 4 Ironhack shirts. We add 2 hoodies, and there's that. Why did I get them twice? Okay, is because I didn't clear it, possibly. Let's find out. 1, 1, 1, by item, right. So we have to go ahead and clear those as well. And then we are just about there. So let's go ahead and which part do we do for that? Input value, items. Okay. We have to clear out our inner HTML before we do it. So right here, when we do this show cart, really we also want to make sure we empty our cart. Our inner HTML is equal to that. And that should have gotten rid of that little bug. 1, 2, 3. Buy items, one of those. Buy items. Beautiful. Everything works as expected. Okay, side by side. And just to make it more and more clear, we're going to go ahead and we're going to say this one. Go ahead and we'll put a div up here. Oh, that might mess things up with flex. Just not do that right now. Go ahead and we'll say section, section, so section, so then those will have to be in divs. Okay, go boom, boom. Divs, div, div. And here, we're going to go ahead and say H2, and we'll say this is your items. And we'll say H2 here, and this is your cart. Okay. We'll go ahead and now we'll format this, save it, and here, hopefully it's a little neater, and there we have it. So we have our items and we have our carts. And that's effectively all that's needed for this type of thing. Last thing we could do is calculate the total. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. And then I think we will be just finished a little over time, but basically we're all done. So this was a lot. I understand that. Okay, this was basically you go ahead and you loop through all the items. Again, in hindsight, we loop through all these items and we show them. Okay, step 1, loop through all items and show them. That's it. We just add them to the DOM like this. Okay, we also want to show our cart. Our cart's empty at first, but when we add things into it, we want to show it. And that's why show cart is called here. After we added things to it, which happens when we change this and click the button. Okay, so that's effectively all of it. And then the last thing we could do is that we could update it. Right, so when we go and we show cart, we're looping through the cart every time. So we might as well go ahead and add these quantities and price together. We have them in there. We should, yes. So we can go ahead and we can say let grand total is equal to 0. Right? And as it's looping through, we can also say grand total plus equals item dot price, okay, times item dot quantity. Okay, and that should be the grand total. And then just like everything else, when you want to finally add it to the DOM, you do document.query selector. We'll say okay, ID grand total, and it'll equal maybe $$ plus the grand total. Okay. Go into HTML, add that div somewhere maybe here. Say div expand ID equals grand total. Okay, and we'll start off at 0, and we'll see what happens. Save it, and here we have $0 in the cart. Go ahead and we add this. Oh, we did not quite do it. So grand total dot inner HTML. Try it again. Add a couple things to the cart, and there it is, $30, 3 times 10. One of these, $45. Okay, and it seems to be working reasonably well. Okay, so all we have to do, again, we're already doing a loop, so we just did the math as we added the loop. Okay, this is probably this is the hardest part, the little input on change. But again, all we really did on a high level is that whenever I was clicking on one of these things, okay, I attached an event listener to this item and to this input. So I just needed this data. So I got this how much the hoodie cost and this button. And when I click that button, I go ahead and I just add it to my cart right here that used to be empty. And all the things in the cart, I loop through them, I show them, and I calculate the total. Okay, so that I think is it. I'm sure Juan is flooded with questions, but I think on my end, that's about all we need to do in order to do the cart. So I'm going to go ahead now, and I'm going to go into the directory. I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to add, commit. I'll say iron cart. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to push this up. Okay, and that means that if you go ahead and you go to GitHub right now, you should see this code that I've written right here. Okay, you'll see it in the script.js or whatnot, so you can feel free to go ahead and take a little more careful look at that. And also, I think I hopefully was lucky enough where if I go to settings and I scroll down and I click on this link, it is also live here. So here, this link will be live, and we'll share that with you guys. Okay, and basically here, buy items, and as you see, it still continues to work. Okay, and the opportunities here are always endless. Of course, you can start to remove items or update them or something like that. Maybe you want to add more things to your shopping cart. Okay, but that effectively does what we're looking for. So Raquel, if you are back,
Hey.
hey everyone. So I think that's just about all of it. I have the code and I have the link, so we will share that with you guys. And I think that will do it. Is there any other last questions or any
We
concerns?
have a few questions right now. Juan, if you want to come back to the screen, it's fine. Yeah. Just like a heads up, like I've been following you guys. I know that some of you may think this is a lot. Some of you may already have like some knowledge in HTML or CSS and some of the stuff you already knew. That's fine. This was beginner level. For some of you, maybe you knew some stuff, and some of you are a bit lost. For those of you who knew some stuff, that's great. Maybe you learned something new, and I'm amazed by that. If not, if you got a bit lost, just remember that the recording will be available after this ends. We will share a follow-up with you so you don't get lost, but it will be pretty much the same link that we have here for the webinar. And also the questions that you made here, and some of them were very technical, you will have access to them after the webinar ends. You just need to access the same way that you would during the webinar. So you go to the Ask Questions section and see the topics and the answered part of it. All right, so no need for if you get lost, no need to make you don't need to feel bad about it. You can review it later. And this was like very, very tough for beginners, right? It was a lot. So I think you can review it later, and I think you'll have no problem in going through it. of course, if you want to, this was just the beginning for you and you want to learn more about the bootcamps and how you can actually have the bootcamp for web development, to make this just a beginning. In these questions, you can also ask about Ironhack in general, or something from the webinar that you didn't quite understand, or about like JavaScript in general, or web development, or, well, whatever you like. I see that Rixu here says, yes, I think we can share our LinkedIn links later on when we finish the questions, or right now if you have them there. In any case, I'd like to know what you thought about this, and if you have more questions that we can answer. We have some stuff in here in the Q&A here. I'm not completely sure, maybe, and Juan was not completely sure as well. And Jay, can you please make this question again that you asked on the Q&A? So can I make the JavaScript work if I code in the HTML as inline JavaScript? Or maybe you guys understand?
You could always you could always make this all inline JavaScript instead of using another JS file. Usually people prefer external files just because I think it may be a little more organized and neat. But yeah, if you're mentioning React or something like that, then you'll see that mixing HTML and JavaScript is pretty common as well. So you can totally get away with it for sure.
Awesome. I see some of the questions have been answered. If you have some like additional questions that you want to make right now, we still have a few minutes. I'm glad that you enjoyed, guys, and that you learned. I'm glad to hear your feedback, Jas. That's amazing. Just a quick reminder as well, if you want to like go further and maybe look for other webinars, maybe explore other areas or extra materials, you can click on this green button that you see below the videos. We have some useful links for you guys. So I have a question from Gwen here. She doesn't use React. So is it not possible only using JavaScript?
I just did it without React. So, oh, sorry, Juan, if you wanted to take that. But that was
no. I was just writing to her right now. Yeah, you can do it just using JS. I'll just recommend React would make life easier later on. That's it.
All right. The link for the video will be this link, but we will share with you later, like, so you don't forget. You gotta follow up. Since you registered, you will receive in the email that you registered for this webinar. So Adrian asks, in the professional world, will we write the UL tag or the content in the JavaScript file or in the HTML file? It's a good question. Very specific.
What was the question? Sorry, one more time.
Adrian, it's here. It's on as the question. It says, in the professional world, will we write a UL tag or the contents in the JavaScript file or in the HTML file?
That's a great question, Adrian. It depends, really. I mean, you will need some sort of selector in the HTML eventually just to know where you want to put it. So we could have written the UL tag in the JavaScript file, but then we would just need something else in the HTML file to target afterwards. So you can kind of do it however you want. It's a matter of preference. But I would say that at the end of the day, you are going to need some sort of target. Otherwise, you don't know where you're going to put it.
That's right. Any more questions, guys, that you want to see answered in here or that haven't been answered before? And if you want to make any comments, Nico or Juan, like from stuff that you remember that'd be useful, we still have like a bit of time. In any case, thank you guys for like, I know that most of you, or at least a big part of you, tried to code along because you asked very specific questions. That's great. I hope that you could manage to actually do this. Is of course, this may be tough, but it's very introductory. And if you were able to at least follow a bit, that was amazing. Like, great accomplishment for you guys. All right, there's an interesting here from an interesting question from Alex. As a junior Java developer wanting to switch to JavaScript for job purposes, in which JavaScript stack would you focus for front end?
Could you elaborate on sect? I would think that JavaScript right now has become full stack, so you can do it on the server side, you can do it on the client side. There's lots of different kinds of libraries. I think Juan mentioning React, that's a good place maybe as well. That's something where I think a lot of job opportunities exist. You can even start to look at things like React Native and Expo, and for making mobile applications, or Electron for making desktop applications. So JavaScript definitely has a whole lot of potential and a whole lot of different kinds of sections or different kinds of parts that include web development. So really, it's kind of what most interests you. And yes, you can use JavaScript to do just about any of that. So
that's right. There's a question here from Jazz that says, do you recommend anywhere to learn more about JavaScript for free online? There's something that you can use. It's called Free Code Bootcamp. I will pass the link in here. In any case, you can, if you see here in the green button, we have upcoming webinars. We will be having more webinars on these. And if you go to our Crowdcast page, we have like recorded webinars that you can register again, as if you were attending, if you want to review some content. And also there's a few blog posts that we share on our blog. You can also see that in the extra resources button. Some of them have some really cool like resources that you can look up to go deep into some of these subjects, even JavaScript, HTML, CSS, the most basic stuff, of course, for you to start with. I hope that answered the question. I don't know if you want to add something else, Nico and Juan. You added here one link. You have here in the ask a question. Okay, guys. In the ask a question, we already put these links here just for you to know the link to the Free Code Bootcamp and JavaScript 30 that Juan shared. So you can have access to it later. That's great feedback, Fixio. We will be having more webinars. All right, guys. If that's about it, I don't know if you want to add something else, but I think it's a wrap, right, guys? Thank you very much for your feedback, by the way.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure. Thank you guys so much. I hope you guys learned something, and if not, just feel free always to reach out, and we'll be happy to do more of these in the future. And maybe if you have ideas for different webinars, also feel free to share those. And
yeah,
we'll be happy we'll have you move forward.
All right, guys. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.